Deadline, Chapter 7. Well into September. I've spent as much time as I'm going to on the basic structure of our government, Lambier says. We've covered the material well in spite of Mr. Wolf's attempted blockades, and your book serves a solid reference. I expect you to know that structure when you address an issue. Clear? When Lambier says clear, it isn't really a question. He's telling you it is. 50% of your grade will come from your civics project, he says. So those of you who haven't, best be selecting one. Again, you can choose from the handout I gave you on the first day, or you can conjure up your own, though, of course, it will be subject to my judgment. He stops beside my desk. What is this you're reading, Mr. Wolf? He touches my paperback with his pointer. The autobiography of Malcolm X, I tell him. Interesting taste, he says. Have you something against Dr. King? Nope, I say, but Malcolm was a pretty interesting guy. Came up the hard way. Indeed, he had some radical ideas, don't you think? A little far from the mainstream. I'm not done with the book yet, but yeah, I'd say he was a little out of the mainstream. Far enough out to get him gunned down by his own people, Lambier says. Cody says, Oh man, you ruined the ending for him. Lambier taps my head with a pointer. You have a clever brother. I suspect you already knew the ending. By the way, you're one of the few who hasn't chosen your project. Can you have it by the end of the week? That I can, sir. In the cafeteria, Cody and I sit at a table alone, going over this week's defenses. Dallas drops her tray next to Cody. Oh, you big tough football boys, teach me the basics of your game. How come all the guys who play football have such big shoulders? Those aren't real, Cody says. We wear shoulder pads. Hey, Dallas. Dallas plops onto the bench in front of her tray, runs her fork through the Spanish rice, and wrinkles her nose. Her bare foot sneaks up under my pant leg. You been racking your brain for someplace nice to take me soon, little wolf? We do want to keep this thing going, right? I was thinking about taking in a volleyball game, I say back. Nothing else to do. Want to come? I mean after the volleyball game. And you'd better be thinking of taking in a volleyball game unless you want your pitiful little life to get more pitiful. Dallas is pretty vocal with her feelings about the differences between emphasis on boys as opposed to girls' sports. Only fooling, dear, I say. Only fooling. Trout's opening volleyball game against Salmon River is a barn burner. The sort of Asian-looking girl with the leap that blocks out the sun is everybody's MVP. On her talent and guts alone, Trout takes it to a fifth, tie-breaking set. Dallas Suzuki is everywhere, diving for balls only extreme sports dudes try for, and drilling kills sooner would be afraid to block. But in the end, it's a team game, and she doesn't have much of a supporting cast this year. In the gray ghost afterward, she is inconsolable. You had a great game, I say, touching her shoulder. We lost. Yeah, but Jesus, we lost. This will not be a warm and fuzzy night. After one bite of her burger at the Chief, she tells me to take her home. Nothing personal, she says. I'm just a bad sport. When I drop her off, she doesn't want me to walk her to the door, which means she doesn't want me to kiss her. So I peck her on the cheek and watch her stride across the lawn, and I'm overwhelmed with that one thought that sneaks up and whacks me across the back of the head when I least expect it. Enjoy it, buddy. You're dying. A block from her house, I pull to the curb and let the fear crawl into my throat and almost strangle me. What you doing up this time of night? Rudy sits by the workbench, looking way better than I expected. I might ask you the same thing, I say. I'm a vampire. What are you doing here? Didn't want to go home, I tell him. Thought you could use some company. You're running around in the middle of the night and you decide the town drunk needs company? I think not. It's true. Well, you're wrong. Then, what's in your back pocket? He asks. Let me see that. I take out the autobiography of Malcolm X, which loosens my pants. It's a big damn book, even in paperback. Serious literature, he says. You know Malcolm? He holds the book, staring at the cover, turns it over in his rough hands. Oh yeah, I know Malcolm, he says, and disappears for a moment into his room. He comes back with his own copy, opens it, and shows me Alex Haley's autograph. He holds the book like a Bible. Malcolm used to get my juices going, he says. I nod toward his room. You have other books in there? You read books because you're alone so much? He gazes across the room at the workbench. You thought all I'd do is drink? I didn't mean that. Being alone isn't new, no worse than my years as a priest. Whack. What? What? He says back. You're a priest? That slipped out. Forget I said it. A Catholic priest. I said forget. Too late. Ex-priest, and keep it to yourself. Shit, who'd believe me? I mean it. You tell no one. His voice has completely lost its slur, turned to a dialect I couldn't distinguish from either of my parents. It is deep and resonant. I can't help but look at him funny. It's a long story, he says. Tell me. No chance. We stand, staring at each other. Okay, then, I say finally. I won't tell anybody, but you have to tell me more about Malcolm X. That could be arranged, but not tonight. Well, thanks for letting me, stop by. He nods, touches my shoulder. Go. Now, that has to be one of the top 5 strangest things that's happened this year, which is saying something when you consider a doctor told me I'm dying, and Dallas Suzuki asked me to homecoming and took me to heaven and then sent me on my way, and I'm starting special teams on a football team. First, he's Rudy McCoy, the town drunk. Then he's Rudy McCoy, who sounds like he stopped drinking. Then he's Rudy McCoy with an autographed copy of Malcolm X, which, I shit you not, is an amazing book. Then he's Rudy McCoy, the ex-Catholic priest. I think when you're dying, you start looking for important things in the corners. You can't let anything that seems even semi-important pass because it passes forever. Things take on meaning. In my pickup on the way home, I'm figuring Rudy McCoy is somebody I'd better get to know better. The Horseshoe Bend game is fast approaching, and all of Trout is holding its breath. I'm up till the wee hours with Cody every night, playing and replaying the HB tapes Coach Banks gave us, studying the physical nuances of the 2 or 3 players who don't get that they're telegraphing Horseshoe Bend's every intention. We've got tapes from all their games so far, thanks to the compulsive nature of Gustavius O'Brien, who needs an A in phys ed to keep aloft his 4-point-plus grade point average, and who can't dribble a basketball twice without sending it scooting off his foot and under the bleachers. He convinced Coach it's as valuable to record physical activity as it is to perform it. Coach wasn't hard to convince. Gustavius provides some primo game tapes. Horseshoe Bend's center linebacker, also their QB, a monster Basque kid named Johnny Bilbao, who probably averages 15 tackles a game, leans back ever so slightly on his haunches when he's expecting a pass, and also lilts slightly to the side he thinks a running play is going. His predictions are uncanny, but Cody's quicksilver when it comes to improvising on the run. And if he catches Bilbao leaning the wrong way for a micro millisecond after the hike, he can burn him at least once out of 10 times. It could come down to that with Horseshoe Bend. They've got studs at the same positions we've got studs, so gaining a fraction of an advantage on 1 out of 10 plays could be the difference. Cody and I refuse to lose this game. That's all there is to it. We watch Bilbao 3 hours straight. He's smart as a whip. He'll figure out Cody figuring him out. They've also got Elston Thomas, a linebacker, and Matt Miller, a defensive guard, who can make Sooners Day a long one. They're both about his same size, and though he's faster, Sooner tends to think he can run right over anyone who gets in his way. And these guys are way tough. Miller takes out the interference, and Thomas cleans up after him. They can switch sides depending on the running tendencies of the other team, so it'll be impossible to run away from them. You see them lining up time after time against the opposition's strengths. But we counter with Dolvin and Glover, who consider it a personal affront each and every time either Sooner or my brother is touched by an opposing player behind the line of scrimmage. And they're pretty quick and versatile, too. And Andy Evans, a threat to catch almost any short ball Cody throws, who doubles as a defensive safety and claims nobody gets behind him. He's right more often than not. This is going to be a good game. You and Coach are going to have to call smart to keep these guys off balance, I tell Cody. And you might have to call more audibles at the line, which is not your best thing. Wish you were on the field with me, he says. When we played backyard ball as kids, Cody and I were always on the same team, and he'd check the call with me. Sometimes he'd just let me make it. If I'm not on the field with you in high school, I'm sure as hell not going to be there in college, I say. We'll go back through all this as soon as we're sure you have these tendencies down. You tell me what you'd call in any given situation, and I'll tell you if we're in sync. Actually, most of the time we are on the same page, which would be Coach's page too. A given play in a given situation usually just makes sense. It's those few times when you can call against the grain that you give yourself a little edge. That usually happens on the field. After several more hours of about 95% of our play calling is identical. Let's get some sleep, I tell him. You gotta be rested come Friday. Boise State Scouts. We'll tell them we're a team, Cody says. We'll tell them shit, I say. We want them looking only at you. They don't give scholarships to guys who come with miniature lookalikes. You're right. We'll unveil you when we get there. Right. In bed, I drift, feel myself slipping toward a conversation with Jesus, but I want it too bad, and when I want it too bad, Jesus makes me wait. I breathe like Jesus taught me and repeat my mantra, little wolf, little wolf, little wolf. It's what I imagine the fans chanting, not exactly Buddhist. Hey, little wolf. Hey, Jesus. Getting complicated, huh? Does the Pope wear a beanie? Sooner prehistoric? Not really, but I get the point. Yeah, we're probably all the same in your eyes. Maybe not all the same, but I stand in a place that gives me a broader perspective. What's up? If you stand in a place that gives you a broader perspective, you should know. Man, why you busting my chops? You're right. You think we have a chance against Horseshoe Bend? Well, I know who I picked in the office pool. But you won't tell me? Life's no fun without risk, he says. I'm worried about my brother. But you know your brother is going to be fine. He was counting on me next year. I mean, no college coach is going to let me have anything to do with their football team, but Cody leans on me, just having me around. But you know your brother is going to be fine, he says again. Yeah. So what's up? You know Rudy McCoy? I know everyone you know. Do you know people I don't know? Stop wasting your time trying to figure out who I am, Rudy McCoy. He's important, isn't he? Does he seem important? I mean, to me. Does he seem important to you? Did you know people on this planet get paid up to $150 an hour to do what you're doing? What's that? Ask questions and never give answers. They're called therapists. I have one. So why are you talking to me? Wow, 150? Am I good? At least I'll know what to come back as. You were talking about Rudy McCoy. It's hard to figure out how to get answers out of Jesus. He never says something is or isn't going to happen, and he won't tell you whether something is right or the wrong thing to do. He exasperates me cubed, but when I get past trying to wrangle answers out of him, he usually brings me around to finding my own. He's like a good math teacher, but I'm like a bad math student. I want the answer, and I don't want to show my work. I'm dying, and I'm impatient. He says, there's time for everything, Ben. God, it's like he hears me thinking as well as he hears me dreaming. This is so bizarre. I'm trying to figure out what to do about Rudy McCoy. I get it that he's important if he feels important, but I don't know what to do. Want some advice? Jesus, I pay for advice. It's Jesus, he says, and it wouldn't help. I'm on an expense account you wouldn't believe. Here's your advice. Pay attention, use your mind, use your instincts. You'll know what to do. Not just with Rudy McCoy, with everyone. Coach stands at the door to the locker room before our next practice. Sooner is out. That plays to a stunned silence. Broken collarbone, Coach says. My brother says, what happened? I saw him after practice yesterday and he was fine. Sooner wasn't in school today, but there wasn't even a rumor. Coach's head ticks slightly to the side. He doesn't answer. This changes things for Horseshoe Bend, he says. More option plays, Cody. You have to be at the top of your running game as well as your throwing game. Cody nods. He's already rethinking. Suddenly we have hours more tape to watch. Cody has to feel prepared. Cody has to feel over-prepared. The option calls are easier to go over because the choice to throw or run or the choice to pitch or run happens after the action starts, and that's Cody's strength. That also puts big pressure on your defense, Coach says. Ben, I'm bringing you in at safety. Andy, you're coming up to fill Sooner's linebacker spot. Andy Evans winces and nods. We've just given away 80 pounds on defense. Thursday morning, Sooner walks into class with a thick cast evident under his shirt and his forearm held tight to his chest with a strap. Hey, Sooner, Randy Dolvin says. What's up? Fuck you. Sooner, Glover says. What happened, man? Fuck you. Cody points at him. Hey, Sooner, man, me too? You too, Sooner says. That's the sum total of what we hear about Sooner's broken collarbone.